Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Vladimir Dees and this is a Class War Battlefield YouTube comment. I've been online watching a lot of videos lately, particularly videos on black history. Now I have, of course, as a black male, I have a great predilection for black history and history in general, but really I like industrial history and black history. And I started thinking, after Obama made his Morehouse speech, I know this is a few months old now, but still, I think it's very pertinent. Obama continues to harp on this theme of black people need to take responsibility for themselves. And a lot of my friends, European American friends, take that same approach. Well, why don't black people, they're always talking about slavery. Well, there's no more excuses. Why don't you take responsibility for yourselves? So I started thinking about that. That's an odd thing to say to black folks, especially for people who don't understand the history of black people. But aside from that, that's still an odd thing to say to black folks, even without people not understanding the history. Let me explain why. In the 1960s, black people started taking responsibility for ourselves. Now, we did it in a way that would help us understand ourselves more fully. This included black studies. This included understanding where we came from. This included starting to practice our individual cultures. In the 1970s, we continued this march forward and continued this desire to know who we were, and to start executing the best possible characteristics from that great past. What happened when we started to do that? And what still happens today when we start to do that? The FBI, the CIA, the DIA, all of these alphabet agencies start coming after us and stopping our leaders from practicing that information which they are discovering. We're stopped from actually being who we should be. So it's kind of ironic to hear somebody tell me that I need to take responsibility for myself, when in reality, the more I or somebody else tries to build up our culture, tries to say, well, we are not just slaves, that's just a sliver of who we are. Let's look at the great civilizations that we built. And let's question why it is that we aren't building that civilization here in America. And let's then start to move forward in building that civilization. When people start to say that, suddenly we get accused not only by the FBI, not only by the CIA, not only by the DIA, of being but by other people, by generally the general populace, of being ethnocentric. We're accused of being ethnocentric because we are trying to build up our culture. Nobody accuses the European American of being ethnocentric, even though the majority of the books that are written, historical especially, are ethnocentric. But if we were to take responsibility, true responsibility for who we are, our leaders are jailed, our leaders are killed, our leaders are exiled. Don't believe me? Answer me this. Why, with all of the great hip-hoppers, true hip-hoppers out there, who are producing music about the cultural relevance of black people, using, not always, but often, using instrumentals that are built around the African diaspora, the musical genres that originate from Africa, why aren't any of them played on the radio? Oh, because people don't like it. Really? I grew up in a time period when people not only liked it, but they loved it. You go back to the early 90s, you go back to the not to the 60s, but to the 80s, when people were combining all of these great world sounds to create this marvelous new sound. The reality is back then the reason why it was tolerated was because, for the most part, the people making those sounds weren't being, I want to say, conscious consciously engaged with the rest of society. Today, however, the people like Jaziri X, who's, he's not necessarily making a ton of, African style music, but there's many people out there, and unfortunately, I'm just now starting to discover them. But a lot of these people are politically astute, a lot of them are consciously engaged, and they believe it is part of their artistic duty to not only put out great music and entertainment, and I scratched that word from there because it's not entertainment. Entertainment is something that destroys. This is music, this is art. But not only to put out great art, but to also engage the public. Engage the public in a campaign of consciousness. And if you have those type of people going around the country saying that we need to set up freedom schools, that we need to set up schools that teach us about our cultures, that we need to set up schools that build our communities, the people in power don't like that. I'll give you a great example. And I always get his name wrong. I always want to say it's Tucky Williams, who was executed a few years back. I think it was 2005, 2006 when he was executed. Former gang member, turned his life around in prison. He was writing books to keep kids out of gangs. Nobody asked, he admitted he killed 3 people. Nobody asked for him to be released. They asked that he remain alive so he could keep kids, particularly black and brown kids, out of gangs. Yet he was executed. Why? Because the people in power want kids, black and brown kids, in gangs. They want us to be destroying each other. If we were to actually build ourselves up, we could challenge white supremacy, and we could challenge their power. Now to you, you may say, oh, this sounds completely stupid. But answer me this. Why is it that white kids, European American kids, want to follow black people? There is something inside of them which they recognize our history is noble. Why is it that the FBI in the 60s released a memo saying we are on the lookout for a black messiah? Not to say that they still aren't on the lookout for black messiahs. But a black messiah who can lead black people in America and black people in general to freedom. Why would they say that if they weren't afraid of it? Why would they kill or jail any true leader who starts to come or who starts to build themselves up? Why would they do it? If they do not understand the power that's really trapped in this skin. They're afraid of it. And this isn't to take anything away from my European American brothers and sisters. This isn't me saying that black people are superior to white people. It's me saying that we are not inferior. There are many things that European Americans can offer to the emerging consciousness that's starting to spread throughout this world. I call it the black consciousness. And when you look up the term black in occult symbolism, you'll understand. It's not negative, it's very positive. But there's many things that European Americans can learn and they could also give to this new consciousness. But they gotta first wake up to the idea that they are victims and perpetrators of white supremacy. Because only then, only when you finally get rid of that, when you recognize that not only are black people as on the same level as you, but they have helped to construct great civilizations before, can you realize that we all have a role to play in building a new world, and we must build it and we must play it. I want to thank you for listening. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can write me at classwarbattlefield@live.com. please, if you notice anybody who posts onto this video and they're putting very ethnicist and negative views, you know, like black people are apes or blah 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 blah, do me a favor. Mark it as spam. Mark it as spam a lot. And I will delete them. Thank you.